The NFL Combine is in the books, and as always, some players saw their stocks go up and some saw their stocks fall. I'm breaking down the 6 biggest winners and losers from this year's Combine, and of course, we are a fantasy football channel, so I'm only talking about skill position players here. No O-linemen, edge rushers, no DBs. Sorry if that's your thing. Got to go watch a different video, but I'm going to break down the 6 biggest winners and losers at the skill positions. And I'm going to start the biggest winner, the running back position. This is the position we already knew was the strength of this class, a deep, good running back class. But man, we saw some of the top prospects really show out. Omario Hampton likely locked in his slot as the number 2 running back drafted in this class, running a 4.46 40 at 221 pounds. That is fantastic. But you know, Quinshon Judkins also had a great 40 time, a 4.48 at 221 pounds. You got to think after Ashton Jeanty, it's going to be these 2 guys, number 2, number 3. Travion Henderson had a good combine here. Really, all the top running back prospects outside of one that I'll get to next had really good combines. But I think the guy that really stood out and really saw his stock rise the most was Bashal Tutin of Virginia Tech. Ran a 4.32 40 while weighing 206 pounds. This is the fastest 40 by a running back since 2003. And he's not coming in like a little guy like Devon Achane, Jahmyr Gibbs. No, 206 pounds running the 4.32 40. He also had the best vertical jump and the second best broad jump among running backs. I think his stock is going to definitely go up here. I think this is a guy we could see potentially go early day 2 in the NFL draft. Really had been an afterthought for most people, but I think now he's got to be on the minds of drafters. He's got to be a guy you're taking shots on late in underdog drafts, in any kind of dynasty drafts you're doing. You got to take a shot on this guy. I think we're going to see his name called a lot earlier than we thought last week when the NFL draft rolls around in April. And now I talked about one of the running backs that was a loser from this combine, and that is Caleb Johnson. I already had my doubts about him, not necessarily as a productive NFL back. I think Caleb Johnson fits the mold of a productive NFL back. My issues with him is I don't think he fits the mold of a high-end fantasy running back, namely somebody who's going to catch a ton of passes, going to rip off long runs. He's a guy, he's going to be a little bit more of, I don't want to call him a grinder necessarily, maybe a slightly juiced up grinder, which look, NFL teams are going to value that. I just have my doubts about him in fantasy, and it did not help. His combine performance was not great. Ran a 4.57 40-yard dash, which look, it's not the kiss of death. Last year, Bucky Irving ran a 4.55 and he was okay, but certainly that is definitely a red flag. Plus his on-field workouts at the combine, they weren't the best. So I do wonder if his stock, even in the minds of NFL, teams, has dropped a little bit. Could we see other running backs? I think the 3, 4 I already talked about, definitely going to go ahead of him. Maybe a couple more will surprise. I think he's going to fall a little bit in the NFL draft, which will drop his ADP. So I think right now, unless his ADP does drop after this combine performance, probably not going to be taking too many shots on him between now and the NFL draft. I'll wait till his stock likely falls after the NFL draft. I mean, it may not. You never know how these teams value these guys. But based on his combine performance and based on the performance of other running backs, I do think he's going to fall farther in the NFL draft than people think. And I think he's going to come out of this, not the best for him. I still think he can be a productive NFL running back. I just have my worries for fantasy as far as how high end of a running back can he be. But it wasn't just the running backs. Matthew Golden had a great combine. He was already getting some buzz among the wide receivers, like, hey, maybe a sleeper wide receiver here, and he did not disappoint at the combine. Ran a 4.29 40 at the combine this year, and he's not the smallest guy. He's not a tiny guy. He's not the biggest guy, right? He's not like a big Nico Collins type wide receiver, but he's big enough for the NFL. He was productive in college, and I think now NFL teams are going to really start looking at this guy, and I think we're going to see him go higher in the draft than a lot of people think. I certainly think he can be a day 2, like a round 2, round 3 pick in the NFL draft, and if he lands at a good spot, his ADP really is going to climb. So he's definitely a guy who comes out looking good, like a definite winner coming out of the combine here. And I think we're going to see his name called earlier than many thought a week ago in the NFL draft. Now, on the flip side, his teammate, Isaiah Bond, not a winner, definitely a loser. He was bragging about how he was going to break Xavier Worthy's combine record, and instead he ran a 4.39, which, look, is not slow. A 4.39 is not slow, but by today's standards, it's nothing special, and it was on his second attempt, so definitely going to see his draft stock drop. Not to mention, this is a guy in his career only 99 catches over the last 3 years, only one game over 100 yards in college. It's not like he's coming from a place of high productivity, where NFL teams are like, okay, he didn't run a fast 40, but he's such a productive wide receiver. Who cares? I think we're really going to see his name fall. I think he's going to fall all the way to day 3. And right now he's being drafted like pick 150 on Underdog. That's just too high for a guy that, look, honestly, may even go undrafted when it's all said and done. So I'm not really taking any shots on him right now. I think there's other wide receivers going later than him who had better combines, who I think will probably see their names called before him, honestly, in the NFL draft. Again, wasn't very productive in college, didn't have a great combine. Yeah, I'm going to be passing on Isaiah Bond from now until at least the NFL draft, if not later. Then we got to give QB some love, and Brady Cook definitely was a winner in this combine. Man, he looked great in the throwing drills. This is a guy who has the arm talent. Like, that's not the question here. He's got the athleticism. He ran a 4.59 40-yard time for a QB, so he's going to give you that rushing. He's got the arm strength, the arm talent. The issue here, the reason why he's not like a highly, touted prospect, now this is a deep QB class, it's basically Cam Ward, Shader Sanders, and then everybody else. But the reason why he's not up there with those guys, well, A, of course, didn't play in the big program like them, did not put up the numbers like them. But B, has questions, big-time question marks with his decision-making. And look, that's something that can go one of two ways, right? It could be like a Justin Fields, where he's continually making bad decisions, and you're like, we can't take any more chances on this guy. Or it could go the way of like a Josh Allen, where he gets in the right system, and they figure that part of his game out, and they help him with that, and he turns into, not saying he's going to be the next Josh Allen, I'm just using Josh Allen as an example. If you were around when Josh Allen was being drafted, nobody thought Josh Allen would be what he is today. Brady Cook, I think, has the potential to be a productive fantasy QB, even in year one, if he lands in the right spot. Like if he falls to, say, the Raiders at 7 with Pete Carroll, or the Saints at 9 with Kellen Moore, two coaches who can get the most out of him, can utilize him the right way, I think he could be a productive QB in year one, like we saw with a guy like Bo Nix last year. Not going to be a stud, not going to be a league winner, I'm not going to go that far, but it could be a productive streaming QB in year one if he lands in the right spot. So I'm very excited to see where he goes, and I'm going to start taking shots on him in underdog drafts. If I'm doing QB3 builds and I'm looking for that very late QB, or maybe I do an elite QB early and I just want to take a flyer on a QB2, I'm going to start taking some shots on this guy, because if he does land in a good spot, he's another guy that's going to go from basically being undrafted in these drafts right now to definitely being drafted. And then the tight end class was kind of okay at the combine, but a big loser was Harold Fannin Jr. This guy was prolific in college, had a prolific career or year, I should say, in college last year, but man, not a very good combine, tested very poorly athletically. And you could say like, hey, yeah, this isn't a guy we thought was going to be a huge, good athletic testing type of guy. But the issue here is when you go back to 2000, according to Kent Lee Platt of MathBomb, who I think he developed the relative athletic score, only 20% of tight ends that have a relative athletic score below 8. The score is 1 through 10, so only 20% of tight ends who have a relative athletic score below 8 have ever made a Pro Bowl since 2000. So very low chances of success here for unathletic tight ends when they get to the pro game. There are exceptions. Zach Ertz probably the most notable, but really it's an uphill climb for a tight end like this, and this is a deep tight end class. I could see, sure, teams are still going to fall in love with the production. He'll still probably be drafted fairly high, but this is a guy most people thought would be the tight end 2, maybe the tight end 3 off the board. Now I'm not so sure, so definitely not a good combine for Fannin Jr., but still, he does have those numbers behind him. That should help keep him at least from falling too far in the NFL draft. And then I have to do an honorable mention loser here. That is Cam Scatabo, a guy I really like, a running back I really love. I know a lot of people saying, oh, that was a terrible combine for him. Sure, it was not great. He was dealing with a low-grade hamstring strain. He only did the vertical jump and the broad jump. He had an okay vertical, a very good broad jump, but look, anybody that thought Cam Scatabo was going to test well Doesn't know anything about Cam Scatabo. This is a guy you got to watch him on the film. This is just a guy who knows how to play football, is a great runner, is a great pass catcher. No, he's not going to be like an RB1. He's probably not going to ever be the RB1, the best running back in the NFL. But I think NFL teams, and look, there's still his pro day, and hopefully his hamstring is healed by then, and he could put up some good numbers at his pro day. But I think NFL teams are going to look past that and see what they see on tape and just say, like, man, this is just a guy who knows how to play football. And I don't think he's going to fall really any farther than he would have fallen before the combine, honestly. So I don't think it was really necessarily a bad combine for Scatabo. It just was kind of like a non-existent combine. So I feel like I do have to mention him because a lot of people are talking about like, oh, he was a loser in the combine. If his ADP drops, I'm going to be all over him still. So we'll see what happens as the drafts go on here. Obviously, a lot of this is still going to change in the NFL draft, and we'll have to wait and see how that goes. A month from now, we got free agency coming up, so stay tuned here. We're going to be breaking down everything you need to get you ready for the 2025 season, starting with our top 10 must-have sleepers. If you haven't seen those guys, you can find them right here.